been doing our series through Genesis, and we made it to chapter 6, and it opens with a rather odd passage, which has been difficult for people over the years to kind of understand. And it, as Christians, when you really stop and kind of think about what is it that we believe, if you were just to kind of write down some key points, it's pretty crazy. It is actually like, no, wait a minute, what? You believe the God who spoke everything into existence came human and was born in a stable, and then his death somehow gets you access to heaven? I mean, that's not rational thought. That's a divine thought. And so my point is, we tend to kind of start a little bit on our heels when we're talking to family or friends that don't understand that. So when you get to a passage like Genesis 6, you're just like, okay, I'm already weird enough. I don't need to go there, okay? I think that's partly why this passage gets dodged. And I think that is to our detriment, because the more I've looked at this, the more I've realized I think this is an incredibly important thing, and I'll show you this morning why I think that. So we're going to look at just a few things of review from last week. One thing we didn't look at it the last week we were together. So it's been a while, and I know there will be people here that may not have been here when we went through these. I don't have a slide for it, but it would be 2 lessons ago or 3 weeks ago, we took the morning and looked at Psalms 92, where God is chastising angelic beings that he had placed in authority over different nations, and he was scolding them for behaving badly. And when you look at that passage, it's like, no, wait a minute, what? There are other gods, and God is scolding other gods, and so it's kind of a strange thing. So if you weren't here for that, I'd encourage you to go back and watch it. As we get into the Tower of Babel later, this will kind of come back up again, and we'll see it there some more. So I literally could probably spend another couple of weeks on this topic to try to flesh this all out. We're not going to do that. This will be it, and then we're back into the flood, back into the flow of Genesis. But it'll come back up again here when we get to the Tower of Babel a little bit. So this morning, let's just go back to what we looked at the last time we were together, which is this first few verses here of Genesis chapter 6. It says, when man began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born to them. So just very normal activity. Human beings are having kids, and they're beginning to multiply and fill the earth, right? Then it says the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. So we talked about, what is that? That is, I'm not sure why my thing has that turned on, sorry. Who are these sons of God in Genesis 6:2? They are angels. There are these Elohim. We talked about that extensively in the Psalms 2, or Psalm 92 week that we talked about. When it talks about other gods, it's other spiritual beings, which we often think of in terms of, we call them angels. They're Elohim, which is simply a spiritual being, but that's what these are. He's talking about the sons of God what it means is created directly by God. So Adam would have been created by God, a son of God, but you and I are not sons of God because we're sons and daughters of Adam and Eve, okay? Now, we can become sons of God through adoption at salvation. But when it says this here, it's referring to these other Elohim, these angels. And we know that they're acting in rebellion because angels aren't supposed to be taking human women as their wives. So that's what we see there. Then it comes to this. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. So if you just read that, it's very clear what it's saying. What makes it unclear is, how does that work? And I can't give you an answer as to how that works, but it is pretty clear what it's saying. When the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. There aren't 7 ways to understand that sentence. You understand what I'm saying? So I understand that it's like, but how? I get that. I'm not going to answer that specifically because I'm not God. I don't get exactly how this occurred. But what we're told specifically is it did occur. And these offspring, these children that were born to them, we think those are what were referred to earlier here as the Nephilim. And then they're described as mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. They were famous. Renowned is famous. These were men that were like, wow, look at him. And we'll see that this morning as we go on. You'll see why this says this. So then it says this as we keep moving forward through that Genesis 6. And the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. There's just a lot of, very amplifying words in that. Only and every and all. So it's just, this is not like normal people behaving badly. This is way beyond that. And it's tied to these Nephilim that are on the earth. There's some kind of a connection there. It's all tied together. So, what do we know for sure about this rebellion? We went through this extensively last time, just a quick recap. We know that the Nephilim were on the earth. We know that. We know that the spirits, or also known as Elohim or sons of God, they did not obey in the days of Noah. We see that in 1 Peter and 2 Peter. The spirits that are referred to in 1 Peter are angels, and they were cast into a prison that Peter calls Tartarus, which was a common word used for a prison for putting angels or demigods or gods. This was common in Greek mythology, so he stole their word to help communicate that well. It's the only time it's used in the Bible, by the way. The angels, one of their sins was they did not stay where they were supposed to. They're supposed to be in the heavenly realm, and they came into the human realm, which is not what they were supposed to do. And in Jude and in Peter, it tells us that the angels' rebellion was sexual in nature. So you start filling all this in, and it's, again, go back to Genesis 6, and it's like, okay, I know it sounds like that's what it's saying, and this is affirming, yes, that is what that's saying. What comes along with that is that man's sin was out of control. What in history might lend credibility to this idea of Elohim having children with human women? So in other words, if this really did happen, if we're not looking just at the scriptures, but just looking at other things in history, what might help us see whether that seems true or not? A common theme in many ancient cultures are demigods. Now, demigods are a hybrid of God and human. Hercules is an example of that. This would not be surprising. It wouldn't surprise us to find that in these ancient cultures if Elohim and women had children of great renown. They were famous. And so this story kind of morphs over time. Now, are the stories true? No, they're not true. There's no Hercules in reality. But the story is based out of a reality. And this kind of gets told and then retold, and it keeps changing. And so when you see something like that, it doesn't mean that the story itself is true. It means the backstory. There's something there. And when we go to the scriptures, we see the reality of what those stories are kind of pointing at. That's the point I'm making to you. So this happened before and after the flood. For example, Gilgamesh and Hercules are both said to be offspring of God and human. All right. So, let me see if that's the last one.
Did you mean to say use the word God?
To be the offspring of God and human, yes.
Okay.
Small God. So, Hercules and Gilgamesh are mythological. They're this human tradition thing. This is That's what we talk about. They are said to be like demigods, which was like Zeus, which I would argue is a demonic or a angel, fallen angel that was with a woman. That's what I think where these stories come from. I don't think they're actually a god. Zeus is not a real god. He's a fallen angel. He's an Elohim, which is what we translate as God. But I don't think there was an actual person called Hercules, okay? So just to be clear on that. Then it says this, but Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Or in the eyes of Jehovah, because I've used the modern King James here. And the reason is, I want you to see this. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man, that's one thing, and perfect in his generations, that's a separate thing. They're not saying he's a good guy and he's a good guy. It's saying he was an honorable man in that he was pursuing relationship with God. He tried to live according to what God had said. He would offer sacrifice the way God had commanded. And then separately from that, he was perfect, or you could say uncorrupted, in his generations, or in his lineage is the way to see that. When you look at that in the ESV, it just says something slightly different, and I think this perfect in his generations helps communicate that more clearly. So when we come back to our main passage here in Genesis 6, this is, I think, another clue of just how bad the situation had gotten. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with violence. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. This is not a minor thing. This isn't like 6 or 7 of these Nephilim running around. This is something bigger here. There's something going on where every intention of all the thoughts of their hearts are evil. All flesh had corrupted their way. And then it singles out Noah and his family as perfect in their generations. And we know they're the only 8 that come onto the ark. Everybody else dies. So when you kind of stitch that together, here's what I think we can reasonably infer about this rebellion. This rebellion was widespread enough that God described the world as all flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth. Only Noah was said to be perfect in his generations. The only solution was to destroy everyone except those 8 people. And by the way, they were sinful people. So he's not eradicating all the sinful ones, or Noah wouldn't have made it on the boat, right? And then he started over with these 8 sinful people. This seems to be more than about people behaving badly. Now, I thought about this afterwards last time. I want to clarify that. This seems to be about more than people behaving badly. It does. I think it's about eradicating this Nephilim thing that Satan had done. But that doesn't in any way give excuse to what the people were doing. Don't hear me say, oh, Satan made me do it. No, you did it, person, you, Bill, Mary. You're the one doing the evil. Were you influenced by and all those things? Yes. So it's not that God is not punishing evil. He is. But there's also this going on. So I just wanted to clarify that. I'm not trying to say it wasn't because these people were evil. They were. All right. So we ended last time with this. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward. And my last thing was last time, so what happens afterward? Well, come back in 2 weeks and we'll fill that in. So here we are. What do we know about the Nephilim who were on the earth after the flood? So we know that happened. We're told explicitly it was in those days and after. So what do we know about that? So let's start here. This is in Genesis 15. This is God speaking to Abraham specifically. He's made a covenant with him, and he says this: "As for you, Abraham, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried in a good old age, and they, meaning his descendants, shall come back here in the fourth generation. For the iniquity of the Amorites, which we'll see more of, is not yet complete. They had done some things, but it hadn't reached its full climax yet. When the sun had gone down and it was dark, behold, a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch passed between these pieces. He had taken animals and cut them in half and laid them aside, and God sort of passes between them, signifying he's making a covenant. On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abraham, saying, to your offspring I give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates, the land of the Kenites, the Kizanites, the Kadmonites, I don't know how you pronounce a lot of these, the Hittites, the Perizzites, and the Rephaim, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and the Jebusites. So he's giving Abraham all this land, okay? So what does that do? It tells Abraham something, okay? Abraham now knows, okay, in 4 generations, my descendants will come back and take this land. And it's very specifically laid out. Well, what does that also do? That tells Satan where the descendants of Abraham are going to be down the road, which then sets up what we see next. Just like when God promises David that he will one day send a king of his lineage whose throne would never be diminished. Oh, I need to wipe out David's line. And so he did. He tried multiple times to kill off the Davidic line so that he could violate, make it so God can't fulfill his promise, right? So that's, Satan just sees this, and now we move forward into that. All right, so they go into the land of Egypt. They're there for their 400 years. They come out. They've had the Red Sea crossing. They come over into the land, and Moses sends in 12 spies, and they come back. And this is the report that they get here in Numbers 13. So they went up and spied out the land from the wilderness of Zin to Rehob, near Hamath, something like that. They went up into the Negeb and came to Hebron. Ahaman, yeah, you can read them. Okay, so after the last comma there, the descendants of Anak were there. So we see this first time, we're going to see this morning, the descendants of Anak were there. Hebron was built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt, and they came to the valley of Eshkelon and cut down from there a branch with a single cluster of grapes, and they carried it on a pole between 2 of them. They also brought some pomegranates and figs. The place was called the Valley of Eshkel, because of the cluster of the people of Israel cut down from there. So you may have remembered seeing this on a flannel board. I remember that. There's 2 guys with a big wooden pole, and it's all bowed down in the middle, and this huge cluster of grapes the size of cantaloupe, That's what this is describing. And they bring it back to say, look at the bounty of the land of the God is giving us, right? So the question will be, who are the descendants of Anak? And are there other people like them? So that's what we're going to start to look at here this morning, is these people, Anak. In fact, I'm going to let someone who's a better reader than I to read this next one. Go ahead. This is further on in that same section.
At the end of 40 days, they returned from spying out the land. And they came to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation of the people of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. They brought word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. And they told him, we came to the land to which you sent us. It flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. However, the people who dwell in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. And besides, we saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites dwell in the land of Negeb. The Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites dwell in the hill country, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea and along the Jordan.
So what do we see? We see that Satan and his minions have had 400 years to solidify and fortify an impenetrable nest over the land that's been promised to the people of Israel. They have large fortified cities filled with strong men, lots of people, and these descendants of Anak are there. And in these different areas, the Negeb and the hill country and along the Jordan and along the sea, these are just all areas through this land that's been given to them. So they're like, you're right, this place is awesome, but this place is filled with monsters, kind of a thing.
Chris,
Yep.
so that means none of the evil Elohim were killed in the flood then?
Yeah, could have. I would say this: the Elohim, being angels, may not have been able to die in the flood, but I think that's when God put them into the bottomless pit as a prison. That's the prison that we talked about in 1 Peter. The spirits who did not stay in their proper dwelling, but came and had women and had children, when the flood came, he put them into the prison of Tartarus. The offspring could die. They were human, but human and Elohim mixture. That's this Nephilim, and they would have died during the flood.
So
Now,
the Elohim took on human form in order to
yes.
procreate,
Right,
obviously.
yes. But here's the thing too. I don't think it's that they took on human form as much as that they have human form. They look like humans, but we don't see them because they're in the heavenly realm generally. Like, for example, we have this vision of angels in with wings and all that. There is nothing like that in Scripture. They look exactly like you and I do. That they look like people. All angels always look like people. They look like men, is what they look like. So I don't think they had to change form. I think they just had to cross over from the heavenly realm to the human realm. Again, how? I don't know how they were. I mean, obviously God would have allowed that to happen, but I don't know exactly what.
Well, when he put them in chains or
Yep, in the bottomless
would
pit.
they have been back in another
No. So
one?
let's go this way. This is this big of a group. Let's say it's this group, this size. We're representative of the fallen angels, sorry. This side over here got involved in this practice, and he put them into the bottomless pit. Well, that means these guys are left. So now after the flood, these 3 or 4 over here say, hey, let's do what they did. And now they do it again, a second time after the flood. Not as many, not as pervasive, because he doesn't need to corrupt the entire earth this time. He's just got to take this one piece of ground and hold it. Satan just needs to make sure that the Israelites can't come to their given area. So he doesn't need to pollute the whole world. He's just got to hang on to this one piece of ground. So he doesn't need near as many Nephilim this time. So a few of these angelic fallen angels would come and create a second line of Nephilim.
So they're in another realm, but they came back to the human realm
Different
during
group.
the flood. Somehow they came back.
There's no coming back.
They're
Still in prison. New ones came in, and they crossed a
So
second
where?
time.
Where did they come in from?
They came from the heavenly realm into the same way that the first ones did. They came from the heavenly realm to the earthly realm.
Some more fallen angels.
So
More fallen angels, yeah.
Or rebelled.
Yeah, they just rebelled in stages. No, it's not that they rebelled in stages as in they were good and became bad. It's maybe they're all bad. But if let's say you got 1 trillion angels and 300 million of them behave badly the first time and 50 behave badly the second time. They did it the same way the first batch did. They just didn't do it in nearly as big of numbers. That's what we're saying. It's called the second incursion. The first incursion happened prior to the flood. The second incursion happened after the flood in a much
I've
smaller.
ever heard about.
I understand. Here's the point.
What kind of
Go ahead.
time frame are we talking about that the Elohim and the Nephilim were on Earth?
Well, the first time we don't really know, but we think it would have been long enough to pollute a large portion of the population, but don't really know when it happened. There was 120 years dictated at the point when it had gotten bad. 120 years later, he sent the flood. When you just said that, I've never heard this before. Yeah. As we go through this morning and you start seeing this, you're going to be like, how in the world have I never heard this before? This is not a minor 3-verse point, is my point that I'll end up making, and you'll see that. It's like, how in the world? I can just tell you this. It's probably 8 years ago. I've been a Christian for 30 years or whatever at that point, and discovered that Jesus was crucified on Passover. What? He's the Passover lamb. How? That's important. How did I not know that? He literally comes in on the 10th of Nicene, which is the day you select the lamb. He's in the temple for 4 days being viewed by the religious leaders like you're supposed to watch the lamb. He's killed on the 14th evening, the 15th, whatever that would have been. Exactly the way you would sacrifice he fits every piece of it. How do I not know that as a Christian? How do I not know that communion is representative of Passover? How do I not know that? This is another one that smacks me in the face and says, how in the world did this not get communicated? So that's why I think it's important. It's an absolutely important part of the biblical narrative that we just don't ever talk about because we're weird enough. We don't need to become more weird, right?
Don't try to tell this to a non-Christian, right?
Yeah, well, I'm going to make a case for that here in a minute, actually, but go ahead.
So where's Lucifer in all this?
Lucifer is Satan, and I think he is simply, it's not like he's God where he tells angels to go do stuff and they do it. He doesn't have that kind of control. He may be the chief of the fallen angels, but they still are sinful angels and they kind of do what they want. And he may say, all right, you guys go do this, and half of them do it and the other half say, whatever. They're fallen angels. They're not very cooperative, probably. So let's keep going. I think I do have a shorter lesson, but it's not real short. And I did it because I know there's going to be more questions. All right. I do actually want to get through a lot of this. Do what? Oh, you have one more. Okay, go ahead. Real quick.
Are angels different from the living beings and the cherubim and the seraphim?
They're all Elohim, which is heavenly beings, and then they're divided into different categories. So angel is a word we use, and it means messenger. Well, a seraphim is not a messenger. It's like a guardian angel. Not of us, but it like guards the throne room of God or that kind. So they have different jobs. That's why I say we often refer to them as angels. They're all Elohim, spiritual beings, but they have different assignments. Think of a military, generals, colonels, captains, privates. What are they? They're army. They're army men. They're military men. That's a universal term, but they're not all the same. They have different functions, right? You have pilots and tank commanders, and same way with the angelic realm. There's this heavenly realm has all kinds of different component pieces to it. They're all Elohim, but they're not all the same in terms of functionality.
Elohim could be explained as meaning God created, not procreated.
Yeah. And it has to be in the heavenly realm, because Adam would have been, and another twist on that is that once you die, Samuel is called an Elohim because he's now in the spiritual realm. And when he's coming up to the witch of Endor to see Saul, she says, I see an Elohim coming up. It's Samuel. So it's a person or a being that's in the spiritual realm. That's what an Elohim is. Okay, let's keep moving. Otherwise, we're going to bog down. I'll have to do another week, and I don't
Now
want to
we
do
know
that.
why people don't teach this.
Exactly. All right. So that's what we just saw, right? This is the report. It's great, but, right, there be monsters in there, that kind of a thing, right? But then this. But Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, let us go up at once and occupy it. for we are well able to overcome it. Why? Because they're mightier than these monster beings? No. They're men of renown. They're not better than these. They're not stronger than them. Then the men who had gone up with him said, we are not able to go up against the people. They are stronger than we are. So they brought to the people of Israel a bad report of the land that they had spied out, saying, the land through which we had gone to spy it out is a land that devours its inhabitants. And all the people that we saw there are of great height. And there we saw the Nephilim. So my point is, to this point, you can say, well, Chris, are you connecting dots maybe where you shouldn't? Is this really where the Nephilim are? Yes. Because we're actually explicitly told these are the Nephilim. Who are they? The sons of Anak, who come from the Nephilim. So not only are they Nephilim, their ancestry, their lineage would be ancestry. And we seem to ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seem to them. So they're giant, we're tiny, we see each other that way. Giant, by the way, doesn't mean 40 feet tall. It's nothing like that. It could be 9 feet. You know what I mean? That would be a giant. Okay. Is that yeah, okay. Please.
And the Lord said to me, do not harass Moab or contend with them in battle.
Sorry, let me set that up. All right. So this is, they're sent into the wilderness for 40 years to die off. These men who were cowardly in the face of this overwhelming monster presence, God said, I'm with you. You should have just moved on in. Trusted me. You didn't. I'm sending you into the wilderness for 40 years. You're all going to die off. Now, who is the all that die off? Fighting age men. Men of military age all die off, with the exception of two, Joshua and Caleb. They were two of the spies, but they were the ones saying, let's go do it. God's with us. We can do it. So he has everyone else die off, and then we get to this. So now go ahead. Sorry.
And the Lord said to me, do not harass Moab or contend with them in the battle, for I will not give you any of their land for possession, because I have given Ar to the people of Lot for possession. The Emim formerly lived there, a people great and many, and tall as the Anakim. Like the Anakim, they are also counted as Rephaim, but the Moabites call them Emim. The Horites also lived in Seir formerly, but the people of Esau dispossessed them, and destroyed them from before them, and settled in their place, as Israel did to the land of their possession, what the Lord gave to them.
So what I want you to see here is these tribe names, Emim, Anakim, all this stuff. These are all different tribes that are associated with Nephilim. That's what this is telling us. The Emim formerly lived there. Who were they? A people great and many, and tall as Anakim. They're of that same lineage. Like the Anakim, they are also counted as Rephaim. We're not going to get into Rephaim today because I don't have time, but it is a variation of the Nephilim. It's specifically telling us they are Nephilim or Rephaim. The Moabites call them the Emim. And then it says the Horites. The Horites is another one. Now here's what's interesting. This isn't Israel that's conquering them. This is the descendants of Lot. And then you see the descendants of Esau. These are the ones that are going in and also conquering Nephilim areas and taking that land over. So this is spreading. It's not just Israel doing it. Now it's the descendants of Lot that are taking out Nephilim, descendants of Esau that are taking out Nephilim. Let's go to the next one. Go ahead.
And when you approach the territory of the people of Ammon, do not harass them or contend with them, for I will not give you any of the land of the people of Ammon as a possession, because I have given it to the sons of Lot for possession. It is also counted as a land of Rephaim. Rephaim formerly lived there, but the Ammonites called them Zamzummim, a people great and many, and tall as the Anakim. But the Lord destroyed them before the Ammonites, and they dispossessed them and settled in their place. as he did for the people of Esau who lived in Seir, when he destroyed the Horites before them, and they dispossessed them and settled in their place even to this day. As for the Avim who lived in villages as far as Gaza, the Captorim who came from Captor destroyed them and settled in their place.
So you can see what's happening, I hope. Satan, if he's like the general of these fallen angels, he's placing these different Nephilim, which are having tribes of people, and not all of them are necessarily all Nephilim, but there are Nephilim as part of these tribes. And he's doing this to kind of just dominate this whole area of the world. And God is going in and completely destroying all of these areas that are filled with these kinds of people. He used Lot's folks to do it. He's given Esau's clan the opportunity to do that. So he's using the people that are kind of with him to destroy these different Nephilim connected, is what I would say, tribes of people. Okay, go ahead.
When you say areas of the world, are you talking about
Just-
present day
yeah.
Israel and
Israel, Jordan, the area that's in the news constantly. Yeah. The land that God had promised to them. Gaza, all of that. You keep seeing Gaza pop up here, which is interesting, but okay, go ahead.
Lot and Esau, did they do this after the Israelites conquered Canaan or
No,
before?
this would have been before, because he's saying, don't go to the land of Ammon, don't harass them, for I have given them that land to Lot. So whether he had just sent Lot in, or Lot's people in there, or if he's going to do that later, I'm not exactly sure. Esau has already conquered his descendants, not Esau himself, but his descendants have already conquered the Horites there. And so yeah, this is going on as Israel is coming in, so is the descendants of Lot, and so are the descendants of Esau, and they're wiping these tribes out. And then they're given lands as well as Israel is given lands. Okay. Go ahead.
Hear, O Israel, you are to cross over the Jordan today, to go into dispossess nations greater and mightier than you, cities great and fortified up to heaven, a people great and tall, the sons of Anakim, whom you know and whom you have heard it said, who can stand before the sons of Anak? Know therefore today that he who goes over before you is a consuming fire, is the Lord your God. He will destroy them and subdue them before you. So you shall drive them out and make them perish quickly, as the Lord has promised you.
So one thing, notice the people of Israel, Joshua, he's going in and doing this destruction, and then Moses is part of that initially. But it is also here, verse 3, know therefore today that he who goes over before you as a consuming fire is the Lord your God. He will destroy them and subdue them before you. So God is ultimately doing this. He's using them, but he's involved in that process of eliminating these tribes of people that are associated with that. I'll read this one. According to the commandment of the Lord to Joshua, he gave to Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, a portion among the people of Judah, whatever that is Hebron. Now, here's what I want you to see. Arba, there it goes, was the father of Anak. So now we know who his dad was. And Caleb drove out from there the 3 sons of Anak, and then it gives us those names. So we get his dad and his 3 sons, and these are all these really tall men of renowned, type thing. And then here we're told that the Perizzites and the Rephaim that are in that country. He tells, this is a different time, he tells this one tribe, go over there and wipe out those people. If the land you have is not enough, take them out. Why? Because they have the Rephaim there. The Rephaim are another way of talking about Nephilim. Okay, so what do we know about the descendants of Anak? The descendants of Anak are Anakim. So that's the tribe. It's called the Anakim. There are 3 sons of Anak, and they come from Nephilim. Anak's father was Arba, and the 3 sons are listed there. The Anakim are also counted as Rephaim. And we'll try to maybe talk about that when we get to the Tower of Babel, what the Rephaim are. The other tribes associated with them are, and I'll let you read them. There's a bunch, and I just put and others, because it just keeps going on and on and on and on. I ran out of space. Okay, so back to our question, what do we know about the Nephilim before the flood? Well, we know one thing, they're made up of a whole bunch of tribes in the land of Promised Land. So now let's look at this, Numbers 21. Go ahead and just read to the end of the highlight section.
Then Israel sent messengers to the Sihon, king of the Amorites, saying, "Let me pass through your land. We will not turn aside into fields or vineyard. We will not drink the water of a well. We will go by the king's highway until we have passed through your territory." So
they're kind of making an offer of peaceful, let's just pass through here, we're not gonna hurt you at all.
But Sihon would not allow Israel to pass through his territory. He gathered all of his people together and went out against Israel to the wilderness and came to Jahaz and fought against Israel.
So he's not having the peace. No, I'm taking you out.
And Israel defeated him with the edge of the sword and took possession of his land from the Arnon to the Jabbok, as far as the Ammonites, for the border of the Ammonites was strong. And Israel took all these cities, and Israel settled in all the cities of the Amorites, the Heshbon, and all of its villages.
And it says, for Heshbon was the city of seeing the king of Amorites.
Who had fought against the former king of Moab, and taken all his land out of his hand, as far as Move Your Hand.
So just another where he's like, hey, we'll just pass by. No, we're fighting you, okay? Then we take you out as well. So you do see that as well. It's not just and one of these, and I don't think I included it. It says, and God hardened his heart, and he went to war with Israel. So it's like they offer peace, and God says, no, you're getting taken out here too. So God hardens his heart like he did to Pharaoh. This is from an Amos 2. This is along later, and it's referencing back. Go ahead.
Yet it was I who destroyed the Amorite before them, whose height was like the height of the cedars, and who was as strong as the oaks. I destroyed his fruit above, and his roots beneath. Also it was I who brought you up out of the land of Egypt, and led you 40 years in the wilderness to possess the land of the Amorite.
So the Amorites are told here to be, I don't think, again, they're 40 feet tall like trees. This is some hyperbolic language. It's just saying they're really tall and really strong. Again, men of renown. This tells us that these Amorites specifically are these Nephilim. This is just a little backstory on what we're going to see next. This for only Og, the king of Bashan, was left of the Rephaim, or the remnant of the Rephaim. Behold, his bed was a bed of iron. Is it not in Rabbah of the Amorites? 9 cubits was its length, 4 cubits was its breadth. This is a huge bed made of iron, according to the common cubit. So that's kind of who he is. Now we'll see this.
They returned and went up the way to Bashan, and Og, the king of Bashan, came out against us, he and all his people, to the battle of Edrei. But the Lord said to me, do not fear him, for I have given him and all his people and his land into your hand. And you shall do to him as you do to Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who lived at Heshbon. So the Lord our God came into our hand, Og also, the king of Bashan, and his people, and we struck him down until we had no survivor left. And we took all his cities at that time. There was not a city that we did not take from them. 60 cities, the whole region of Argob, the kingdom of Og and Bashan. All these were cities fortified with high walls, gates, and bars, besides very many unwalled villages. And we devoted them to destruction, as we did to the Sihon, the king of Heshbon. I can't read it.
Devoted. devoted to destruction, every city. And this is what I want you to catch: men, women, and children. So I'm watching a interview, and there's 4 guys, and it's 2 guys that are Muslim and 2 guys that used to be and are now Christians, and they're debating. And the Muslim guys, one of their big complaints about Christianity is your God is a genocidal maniac who kills off whole nations of people with men, women, and children. And they probably cited this passage. And these guys don't really have a great answer for that. They're like, well, yeah, but that was back in the Old Testament and he's nice now and blah, 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 right? I think what we're looking at gives an answer. It's not an answer people will like, but it is an answer. He's not just killing people off because they're bad. That wouldn't make sense why you'd kill babies because their dad did something wrong. We don't do that. God doesn't do that. But what we do see is if there is this tainted bloodline and they're no longer sons and daughters of Adam, they are human, but with Elohim parentage, he's eradicating that corruption of humanity. That's what he's doing. And that's a different thing than what we've always kind of been. It's just one of those, well, I know that's a really icky part of the Old Testament where God killed off all these kids and stuff. Yeah, but there was an actual reason for that, is the point. All right. Devote to destruction. That, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through all those. This is where it talks about Joshua coming in and cutting off these people, and it's in the hill country. And he devotes them to destruction. Then it's from the hill country the first one is hill country of Judah, then the hill country of Israel. He devoted them to destruction. This devoted to destruction is a specific Hebrew word, and it is like set apart for holiness, or in this case, set apart for destruction. It's like the altar is this. It's set apart. These folks are set apart to God to be destroyed because of what had been going on there. So it's a very specific word, and it's always, with one exception, which I won't, anyway, it's associated with these clans, okay? So I want you to see that here, after he says that. By the way, Judah and Israel is after they've been divided into the 2 nations. So this is written long later and is saying he killed off all these things in this part of Israel and also in all of this part of Israel. And then it says this: there was none of the Anakim left in the land of the people of Israel. Again, Anakim are the Nephilim. So this is saying that when he was done, when Joshua was finished, they had accomplished the mission. It's just not killing everybody, it's getting rid of all the Nephilim. That was the point of doing what they were doing. And this kind of helps clarify that. So, what do we know about Nephilim after the flood? They and their descendants populated the promised land. Again, Satan knows this is where the children of Israel are coming. Let's go fortify it and make it a stronghold that they can't come into. He populated the promised land. This seems to be a strategy of Satan to prevent the people of Israel from inhabiting the land that God had promised them. This also helps explain why God had Israel and the descendants of both Lot and Esau devote to destruction certain whole people groups. Like in the flood, God is eliminating the Nephilim, only this time on a smaller scale. So what does this connect to the flood? Absolutely. It's the same purpose, but on a different scale. It's not the whole world now. Now it's just the promised land that he has to deal with. And he uses the Israelites, the descendants of Lot, and the descendants of Esau to go in and eradicate these people. Why does the topic matter? The topic of Genesis 6. I gave you these before. God has revealed these things in his word, and it's our duty to figure out their importance. Second, the nature of this rebellion back in Genesis 6 helps explain the reason for the flood. Here's the new one. God is not genocidal when he devotes to destruction nations. He is eliminating people that are no longer full descendants of Adam and Eve. That's what he's doing. That's what he's doing. He's not just being mad and wiping out nations because their parents were bad. He's eliminating people that are no longer full descendants. Secondly, if we don't understand this issue, we miss the primary theme that runs through much of the Old Testament. What do I mean there? I mean, how many of us have understood why they went into the land and killed off all these people? I didn't understand that. Now that I understand that, that makes sense, right? Samuel, 1 Samuel 17. I'm not going to read it for the sake of time. Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. Cubits can be debated about whether they're 18 inches or 24 inches, so he's somewhere between 9 foot 9 inches and 11 foot 4 inches. That's the height of Goliath, something in that range. He has this bronze helmet, and his coat of armor weighs 133 pounds. This is the amazing one. His shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, big piece of wood, right? And the spearhead weighed 600 shekels of iron. I did some math and looked this up. It's 16 pounds. By the way, typical sledgehammer, if you've ever picked one up, is an 8 to 10 pounds. And I think Dad has one that's like a really heavy one, and it's 12. And it's hard to swing. This is 16 on the end of a giant wooden pike. You gotta be an 11-foot guy to be able to manhandle the thing and throw it. I mean, it's a spear. I couldn't hit that desk with a sledgehammer if I threw it. You know what I'm saying? So these are that's why they're called men of renown, strong and tall, and they're just there are monsters in the land. You see what I'm saying? That's what it was all about, was scaring the people of Israel into disobedience to God. Go take the land. I'm with you. No, I see those giants. I'm not going in there. Okay, let me show you this. This is in 1 Chronicles. There was a war arose with the Philistines. And then it says this. Somebody struck down Lahemiah, the brother of Goliath. When we study on, there's 4 brothers. David picks up 5 smooth stones. He doesn't plan to miss. He's worried about his 4 brothers. You get that? He's like, I got one for each of you. Come on, let's go. This is what David is doing. It makes that story even more amazing when you realize he's thinking I might have to fight them all off, and he only grabs 5 stones. Okay? All right. Here's the thing I want you to see. The brother of Goliath, the Gittite, the shaft of whose spear was like a weaver's beam, and same thing. And there was a war at Gath, and there was a man who was great stature, who had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in number, and he was a descendant from the giants. We skipped that somehow on Sunday morning somewhere. I don't know how we missed that one, right? Again, why do we not talk about it? Because it's like, okay, now come on, really? We have that in our Bible? Yeah, we do. This is what, when you say, well, what would the Nephilim have been like? What do we mean no longer sons and daughters of Adam and Eve? Well, they have 6 toes, 6 fingers, they're very tall, and they're, yeah. Go ahead.
Helps me understand my brother Steve.
Yeah.
Because when I present the gospel to him and then he come back a year later and I ask him about it again, he says, well, I got a funny story to tell you. When people ask me about the gospel, when I get up there, I'm going to ask him, do you really expect me to believe all the myths in the Bible?
Yeah.
How do you believe that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're non-Christian, you don't have the Lord revealing it. So, yeah.
And my answer to that is, if God has done a work in your heart, you know who you were and you know who you are, that is a bigger miracle than 6 toes and 6 fingers, or being alive in the belly of a fish for 3 days, or any other thing in the, right? It's like, I believe that because he did this, right? But if he's never done that in you, it's unbelievable. I think as a way of filtering out unbelievers from the scriptures. It's like he tells parables so people don't understand what he's saying. One more
I
than...
just wanted to say there's people throughout history that have had 6 fingers and 6 toes, so it's not just then, it's.
Right,
if
and
you
there
can
are.
find that.
Here's the other thing. Do we have them today? I don't know. I'm not sure that we don't maybe still have some of this happening somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah, you can find it on the internet.
Yeah.
It's true.
It gets, a lot of that stuff does get eliminated. So remember this, my question was here. How does understanding this issue affect my life today? So I've given you the why it matters, but how does it affect you next Tuesday, okay? I'm not gonna read these, I'm just gonna remind you of them. These are the spies who are terrified of these giants. God is saying, go into the land, take the land, I'm giving it to you. No, 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 it's too frightening. I'm not going to move forward in obedience. Goliath, he's taunting the nation of Israel. This is David's response, if I'm remembering the passage right. The Philistine, this is Goliath, said to David, come to me and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the fields. Then David said to the Philistine, you come to me with a sword and a spear, with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, who you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. I will give your dead bodies to the host of the Philistines this day, to the birds of the air and the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that all this assembly may know that the Lord saves not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into my hand. So what's the point? The point is, you are going to face things that will seem like a giant situation. And I'm convinced God does that for the same reason he had them face Goliath. Because it sorts out those who believe and those who don't. So you have this whole nation of Israel standing there shaking at Goliath, and this little kid David shows up and says, what's wrong with you people? Come on. And he grabs the 5 stones and goes out and kills one. And then they all go, oh, God's on our side. And then they charge in and kill the rest of the Philistines. That's what's going on. Now, we can get that if we don't understand this whole Nephilim thing. But to me, it brings us to a whole nother level. When you see, he wasn't just a tall guy. It's not me versus Shaquille O'Neal. That's not really what's happening. Goliath is on a whole nother level. And David is this young boy at the time, at least a young man. And his faith was in God, not in his own ability. Last thing, you were dead in your trespasses and sin, which you once walked, following the course of this world, following the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that is now work in the sons of disobedience. This verse 2 explains this is the air we breathe. This is the world we live in. We live in a world that is run by the prince of the power of the air and the spirit that is now at work in the sons of disobedience. Everything in your life that you're connected with that's not connected to something godly is this. It's this environment. It's the promised land filled with monsters. That's what the world you live in. And he's asking you to talk to your atheist uncle at Thanksgiving. I can't do that. These people already think I'm crazy. Yep. And they're going to think you're more crazy once you open your mouth. But that's what he's called you to do. So how does understanding this affect your life today? The spirit of the age will always try to stop you from doing what God has called you to do. We must look past the giant problem in front of us and trust him to work out the details as we obey him. That's what they should have done 40 years earlier, but they didn't. And eventually, when they do come back, God goes before them and conquers these monsters that are in front of them. Let me pray for us, and we'll end, and then I'll hang out and talk a little bit if you'd like. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this morning. I hope that I've done justice to your word this morning and helped us to understand this is not a minor thing in the scripture. It's all through. It helps us understand so many other passages within the scripture if we understand this. Help us to be encouraged by this, that no matter what the circumstance, you are able to be with us and conquer the situation that we face. Help us as we go out this week and this month and we see friends and family. Give us boldness. Help us to speak and proclaim your truth and your love to them. And we pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.